Smallpox is the largest and most complicated virus, containing 200 to 400 genes. It is also one of the most deadly, having killed or crippled countless people since its first appearance in ancient Egypt. Smallpox has shaped history, its greatest influence being in the European conquest of the Americas. The Native Americans, not having any immunity to smallpox and other European diseases, started dying by the hundreds, giving advantages to the settlers. In the year 1948, the United Nations created the World Health Organization, or WHO. WHO strives to control and eradicate deadly diseases, epidemics, and pandemics. From 1966 to 1980, WHO eradicated smallpox.
It was perhaps the greatest medical and public health triumph in history. I can't exceed that description.
Smallpox leaves many marks on its victims, mentally and physically. After a 10 to 14-day long incubation period, the initial symptoms begin to appear, including fevers, aches, and sometimes vomiting. This usually lasts 2 to 4 days. Then a small rash emerges in and around the mouth. This is when the person is not contagious. The bumps eventually become raised bumps. These bumps fill with pus and acquire a shape similar to a navel or belly button. The bumps finally become pustules, which are round and sharply raised, feeling as if there was a small, hard object embedded in the skin. 5 days later, the pustules become scabbed. These scabs then fall off, leaving scars. If the person was not dead by then, he or she is no longer contagious.
It's one of the most horrific-looking diseases because it causes pustules and then crusts on your skin. It knocks people out so that they have high fever and can't eat or drink because these sores are all over their face, and it kills them.
The vaccine that the workers had used had its roots in 1796. Dr. Edward Jenner developed the first vaccine, which conveniently was for smallpox. Previously, a method for disease control known as inoculation or variolation had been used. Jenner ended his vaccination experiments that same year. Jenner believed his vaccines were inefficient and the government had refused to fund him, so he had given up. The leader of WHO's smallpox project was Dr. Donald A. Henderson. The smallpox project was Henderson's first leadership role in WHO. During that time, he was chief surveillance officer, and at age 38, he and his group started the eradication.
More developed countries, like Russia, had already eradicated smallpox. Second and third world countries still had a smallpox problem. These countries included India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Brazil, and many African countries. The plan for these countries was originally mass vaccination, where health workers would attempt to vaccinate at least 80% of the population. This strategy was quickly replaced by surveillance containment, where cases were identified and controlled by vaccinating everyone in the immediate area. The workers used a tool called the bifurcated needle for vaccination.
The eradication of smallpox had many effects. First, it laid the foundation for eradicating other diseases. At a World Health Assembly, WHA, held after smallpox had been eradicated, new diseases like polio and guinea worm disease were targeted for eradication in much the same manner as smallpox was eradicated. Also, the Extended Program on Immunization, EPI, that helps control diseases was created after smallpox was eradicated. Smallpox eradication had other effects too. Throughout the eradication, new technology like the pedojet and the bifurcated needle were used. These were new and more efficient ways of administering vaccinations.
The eradication of smallpox has really changed medicine, and I think in the most important way, it created an ambition for doing more things globally, internationally, with cooperation, with international organizations, with national organizations. It showed that if we put our mind to it, all working together, that we could really achieve something that might not be even thinkable before we put that ambition in front of us. It also showed us that it wasn't just having a vaccine or a drug or an insecticide or whatever, but it was having good detection of cases, good laboratories, good management, good leadership, and good logistics. So there were a lot of management issues here and administration as well as just pure medicine.
Today, new ideas and controversy about smallpox have come up, the biggest issue being a threat of bioterrorism. If the few remaining samples got into uncertain circumstances, the non-vaccinated majority of the world would suffer. Because there are only few samples left of smallpox, it also means that there's few vaccines left for the disease. The big question today is whether or not the world should keep these samples.
It's a challenge that we have to confront. It's a worry because most of the world is now unvaccinated. There are both positives and negatives. And these issues have been debated very, very heavily for many, many years. My personal opinion is that the evidence for destroying it based on public health reasons outweigh the reasons for keeping it. The reasons for keeping it involve, number one, developing a new vaccine, and we already have some newer vaccines that are effective. Second, some drugs, and third, developing some animal models. Others think we could use the smallpox virus for understanding the biology of cells and maybe even other diseases. However, knowing that it is still in laboratories, even though they're under maximum containment, does pose a known risk. And we don't know and can't quantify the risk of it escaping or having some of these terrorist groups get a hold of it.